The sound that shattered my life wasn't a scream. It was laughter. Soft. Familiar. Intimate. It echoed off concrete walls, bouncing through the parking structure like a secret that didn't know how to stay hidden. I froze mid-step, one heel suspended above the oil-stained ground, my pulse hammering so loudly I was sure they could hear it. I knew that laugh. I'd grown up with it. I followed the sound slowly, my body moving before my brain could catch up. My hand brushed the cold metal of a nearby car as I turned the corner. And there they were, pressed against a silver SUV like the world had narrowed to just the two of them. My sister. My fiancé. His hand rested too low on her back. Her fingers were tangled in his hair, her smile tilted and private. The kind she used to reserve for mirrors and men who wanted to be chosen. For a moment, I wondered if grief had finally cracked my mind wide open. Then he leaned in and kissed her. Something inside me went silent. Not shattered. Not broken. Just switched off. They jumped apart when they noticed me, like kids caught stealing something small, not like two adults caught destroying a life. Wait, my sister said, her voice shaking. I stepped forward, calm in a way that scared even me. How long? I asked. My fiancé stared at the ground. A while. I nodded. The lies or shorter? Silence. That told me everything. I slipped the ring finger. The one I stared at under restaurant, believing it meant forever, and dropped it between. It hit the concrete before settling, sharp and final. Then I turned around and walked away. I didn't cry. Not yet. That came later. 3 years earlier, my life had been smaller, softer, predictable in the best way. I lived in a coastal city where mornings smelled like salt air and roasted coffee beans. I worked in music marketing, the kind of job that kept my calendar full and my creativity fed. I had my routines, early walks, the same corner cafe, the same barista who never forgot my order. I'd built a quiet independence I was proud of. Then he showed up. We met at a neighborhood cookout, the kind with folding chairs, loud aunties, and music playing just a little too loud. He was charming without trying too hard, funny in a way that made people lean in. When we were introduced, he held my hand a second longer than necessary. I noticed. I liked it. Dates followed easily. Walks by the water. Hidden restaurants. Thoughtful gestures that felt rare, not rehearsed. When he remembered my favorite flowers after I mentioned them once, something inside me softened. My family loved him. Even my father, who rarely trusted men who smiled too smoothly, approved. My sister, always radiant, always center stage, seemed supportive, even excited. For once, I wasn't the quiet one standing just off to the side. I was chosen. When he proposed months later as the sky turned gold over the water, I said yes with tears in my eyes and a heart full of certainty. That certainty didn't survive the year. Illness crept into our lives quietly, then took over everything. Hospital rooms replaced wedding planning. My father grew thinner. My nights grew longer. At first, my fiancé stayed close. Then he drifted. Late nights. Missed calls. Patience spoken like a favor instead of love. My sister became my comfort. My shield. Or so I thought. Until whispers started reaching me. Until charges appeared on cards that didn't make sense. Until laughter echoed in a parking garage when it shouldn't have. And suddenly, the story I thought I was living ended without warning. Calling off the wedding felt like dismantling a house I'd already moved into emotionally. Vendors called. Messages piled up. Silence grew heavy. When I told my father, he didn't ask questions. He just held my hand. You deserve better, he said. And you'll see that someday. I moved back home. Back into a bedroom frozen in time. My sister lived there too, playing the role of dutiful daughter, while avoiding my eyes. 2 months later, my father passed quietly before dawn. Grief didn't crash into me. It settled. At the funeral, my sister stood at the front, composed and glowing, and spoke about love and hard times. When I couldn't finish my own words, she stepped forward again, strong, confident, visible. Later, I saw them together. Her head leaned toward his hand at her waist. I understood then that betrayal doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it arrives dressed as family. That night, surrounded by murmurs and pity, I sat alone in my father's study. His journal lay open in the drawer, his handwriting steady even near the end. She is stronger than she knows. My uncle found me there. You didn't lose everything, he said. You lost what wasn't meant to stay. Then he offered me an escape. A job. A city far away. Space to breathe. I didn't say yes immediately, but the seed was planted. 2 weeks later, I stood in my empty apartment, surrounded by boxes and the quiet hum of a life waiting to be rewritten. As the plane lifted into the sky, I pressed my forehead to the window. I wasn't healed, but I was moving, and that mattered. The city didn't welcome me. It didn't need to. The wind cut through my coat the first morning I stepped outside, sharp and unapologetic, as if to say, whatever you brought with you, leave it here. I liked that about this place. No pity. No recognition. No whispers tied to my last name or my past. Just brick, steel, and forward motion. My uncle set me up in a modest apartment not far from the water. Tall windows. Old floors that creaked when I walked across them. The kind of quiet that didn't feel lonely, just unfinished. I unpacked slowly. Not because I was tired, but because every box felt like a decision. What version of me stayed? What version got buried? Work started immediately. My uncle ran a cultural branding firm, storytelling with teeth. The first day, he tossed a stack of client files onto my desk and said, "Let's see how sharp you really are." I didn't smile. I sharpened. I reorganized systems that had been limping along for years. Streamlined pitches. Rewrote strategies that felt lazy. I spoke up in meetings where silence had once been my default. People noticed. And that scared me more than invisibility ever had. At night, when the adrenaline wore off, grief came knocking. It arrived quietly, when I reached for my phone out of habit, when I smelled a familiar cologne in an elevator, when I heard sisters laughing too loudly at brunch tables. That's when I met her. My first real friend in the city. She sat across from me during lunch one day, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You're running." I nearly choked on my sandwich. "Excuse me." She didn't flinch. I've seen that look. People think if they keep moving, pain gets tired and stops chasing them. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. She grinned. "Relax. I'm not judging. I just clock patterns. Occupational hazard." That was her. Unfiltered, brilliant, dressed like she didn't ask permission from anyone. She became my bridge back to the world. Poetry nights. Loud dinners. Conversations that didn't tiptoe around my sadness, but didn't worship it either. One night, after too much wine and not enough denial, she said, "You need therapy." I laughed. "I need sleep." She leaned closer. "You need to talk to someone who won't flinch when you say the ugly stuff." She was right. The therapist's office smelled like sage and patience. The woman across from me listened without interrupting as I talked about betrayal, grief, the rage I swallowed whole because I didn't want it to poison me. "You're not angry enough," she said gently. That sentence cracked something open. I cried for my father, for the sister I thought I had, for the future that died quietly while I was busy being strong. Week by week, I peeled back layers I didn't even know I'd wrapped around myself. Meanwhile, my life kept growing. Work rewarded my focus. Promotions came faster than I expected. People stopped seeing me as the quiet new hire and started seeing me as the one with answers. And somewhere in the middle of all that growth, something unexpected happened. I laughed. Not politely. Not carefully. Really laughed. It surprised me every time. Back home, messages piled up unanswered. Apologies. Justifications. Invitations I didn't accept. I didn't block everything out of bitterness. I blocked it out of self-preservation. Then one winter evening, dressed in confidence I hadn't owned before, I stood at a company gala nursing a drink I didn't even like. Someone bumped into me. Water splashed down the front of my dress. "I am so sorry," a man said quickly, already reaching for napkins. I looked up. Tall. Calm. Kind eyes that didn't rush me or skim my body. "It's okay," I said. He smiled. Let me at least owe you something for surviving that. I raised a brow. Surviving. Spilled drinks are character building. I laughed. There it was again. He introduced himself. I gave only my first name. We talked for 5 minutes. Maybe 6. It felt easy. Too easy. When he walked away, I told myself not to overthink it. A week later, I walked into a conference room, and there he was. Already seated. Smiling like fate had a sense of humor. I still owe you that drink, he said. Something in my chest shifted. Not fireworks. Not panic. Just curiosity. And after everything I'd been through, curiosity felt dangerous. And delicious. I didn't fall for him. That's what I told myself. I considered him. Carefully. Like someone reading the fine print after being burned by invisible ink. Our dinners stayed light at first. Conversations danced around history without stepping directly into it. He didn't push. Didn't pry. That alone made him different. He listened in a way that wasn't performative. When he asked questions, they didn't feel like interviews. They felt like curiosity without ownership. Still, I kept one foot out the door. Old instincts die slow. Success arrived louder than I expected. Projects with bigger budgets. Meetings where my name carried weight. People started recognizing me at industry events. Visibility is flattering, until it's dangerous. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. A message preview flashed across the screen. I heard you're doing well. My stomach dropped. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Some ghosts announced themselves softly. Around the same time, he told me about his past. Not in a dramatic reveal. Just one evening over dinner like it was weather. He'd loved deeply once. Lost it to something that didn't ask permission. He spoke about grief with respect, not bitterness. I didn't think I'd want this again, he admitted. Connection. Risk. I nodded. Neither did I. It was the truest thing I'd said in years. The first time he touched my hand, my body froze, not from fear, but from memory. He noticed immediately. Pulled back. Didn't apologize like he'd done something wrong. Just waited. That moment mattered more than he knew. Work pulled me forward while my heart hesitated behind me. I stood on rooftops celebrating wins I never imagined. Friends toasted to my glow-up, like it was a comeback tour. But healing isn't linear. It's a spiral. And the past came back swinging. A mutual acquaintance reached out, pretending it was casual. Asked if I'd heard the news. Asked if I was okay. I knew what that meant. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. That night, I told him everything. The betrayal. The sister. The way love had been weaponized against me. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. You didn't deserve any of that. It wasn't profound. It was grounding. But the fear lingered. What if I chose wrong again? What if success invited jealousy back into my life? What if love was just another setup? Then came the invitation. A family event. A milestone. A city I'd avoided returning to. I stared at the message longer than I should have. He found me like that, silent, phone in hand. You don't have to go, he said gently. I know. But part of me wants to show up, not for them. For me. He nodded. Then I'll stand next to you. Or behind you. Whatever you need. That was the moment something settled. Not trust. Not yet. But belief. That night, as we lay side by side fully clothed, fully awake, I realized something unsettling. I wasn't afraid of being hurt again. I was afraid of being seen. Because being seen meant being known. And being known meant having something to lose. The message I'd ignored buzzed again. Then again. I finally opened it. We need to talk. I smiled thinly at the screen. No. We really didn't. But the universe, it seemed, wasn't done testing me yet. I didn't plan the encounter. That's the funny thing about closure. You rarely get to schedule it. The city I once fled greeted me with polite indifference when we arrived. Familiar streets looked smaller somehow, like they'd shrunk without me. I checked into a hotel instead of a childhood home. That alone felt like growth. The night of the gathering, I dressed simply. Clean lines. No armor. No nostalgia. When I walked in with my husband beside me, conversation faltered for half a breath. Long enough to be noticed. Short enough to pretend it didn't happen. My mother cried when she hugged me. The good kind. The relieved kind. Then I saw her. My sister stood near the bar, stiff-backed, smile strained like she'd practiced it in a mirror that wasn't kind. The man next to her looked tired in a way ambition never fixes. Our eyes met. She blinked first. Dinner unfolded with forced pleasantries and careful forks. My husband carried conversation effortlessly, asking questions that revealed more than he intended. Careers. Finances. Futures. When he raised his glass to toast my mother, pride shimmered in his voice. Not ownership. Not performance. My sister's smile cracked. Later, in the restroom, she cornered me. You did this on purpose, she hissed. I washed my hands slowly. I came for Mom. You brought him to humiliate me. I turned. Met her eyes. They were frantic now. I didn't build my life to spite you. I said evenly. I built it because I had to. Her voice dropped. I'm drowning. I believed her. But belief doesn't equal responsibility. I hope you find your way, I said. But I'm not your raft. She stared at me like she'd finally realized something too late. When I walked away, my chest felt light. Not victorious. Released. That night, my husband asked if I was okay. I am, I said, surprised to find it was true. The texts came after. Apologies. Explanations. Requests wrapped in guilt. In therapy, I drafted a response with surgical care. I forgive you for my peace. I can't be part of your healing. Please respect this boundary. I sent it. Then I blocked the number. 6 months later, news reached me secondhand. Their life had imploded quietly. Accusations. Losses. A public unraveling without an audience. I felt nothing. That's when I knew I'd won. Not against her. Against the version of myself that once thought love meant self-erasure. At home, my life expanded. My work thrived. My marriage deepened. Not in fireworks, but in steadiness. In laughter over burnt dinners. In hands finding each other without thinking. One morning, I stared at a plastic stick in disbelief. Then another. Then another. When I told him, he dropped to the floor beside me, laughing and crying like joy had knocked the breath out of him. Later that evening, a letter arrived. Handwritten. Familiar curves. She confessed everything. I read it once. Then folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. Some doors are meant to stay closed. And that night, as I rested my hand over my growing belly, I understood something finally, completely. What was taken from me wasn't a future. It was a cage. Peace doesn't announce itself. It settles in quietly, like sunlight you don't notice until you realize you're warm. I felt it one evening while walking beside the water, my husband's hand steady in mine, the city humming around us. The baby shifted inside me, gentle, intentional, real. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing for impact. I was present. My days filled with work that mattered. Stories I helped shape. Businesses built with integrity instead of ego. I watched my agency grow beyond anything I'd imagined. Not because I was chasing success, but because I was no longer running from myself. Motherhood arrived not as a replacement for loss, but as a continuation of love. I whispered stories to my belly at night, told my child about resilience without bitterness, about choosing yourself without apology. Grief still visited sometimes, but it no longer unpacked. One afternoon my mother called. Her voice softer now. Older. They're divorcing, she said. It's messy. I listened without reacting. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet and realized something important. I didn't need vindication. Life had handled it. Weeks later, another letter arrived. I didn't open it. Not out of anger. Out of completion. Some truths don't need to be revisited. On a breezy evening, as the sun dipped low and the city lights flickered on, I felt a strong kick. I grabbed my husband's hand. He laughed, eyes bright with wonder. And in that moment, I thought of my father. Of his words. She is stronger than she knows. I had risen. But more than that, I had chosen. Not revenge. Not bitterness, but clarity. What they took from me wasn't love. It was an illusion. And in losing it, I found something far more powerful. Myself. The ones who break us don't decide who we become. We do. Please click the subscribe button, like, share, and comment. This will encourage me to make more interesting stories. Also, let's know where you are watching from. Thank you and see you in the next story.